This week on Hooligan Nation, is it the best KISS album? Is it a musical masterpiece? Is it overproduced? The Destroyer album review. You wanted the best, and KISS quite possibly gave you the best right here. So let's cue the intro, because you got
nothing to lose.
You wanted the best? Well, they retired. So you got two dudes in a garage
talking KISS. Welcome back to Hooligan Nation. I'm Anthony.
And I'm Rocco.
On today's episode, we're going to discuss everything there is to discuss. What quite possibly may be the single greatest studio KISS album ever made, Destroyer. So first and foremost, what's up? We haven't been here in a week.
I know. I miss doing this stuff.
What'd you think about last episode?
I thought it was interesting. Like I said, I didn't know a lot about Jackal, and most of my information I'm getting from you. I had heard about the band. I knew of the show, Full Throttle Saloon. They got good stuff, and I'm still kind of diving in. I don't know a lot about them, but they definitely have some similarities with KISS, with like making sure that they're giving the fans what they want. When they're obviously smaller venues, but with the theatrics that he does with the chainsaw and the shotgun and everything like that, it's about the showmanship for them, as well as the music, just like KISS.
Have you had the chance to listen to the song Stranded yet?
I have. A very interesting song.
I love it.
It's a good tune.
I love it. I can't stop listening to it.
I tell you what, you can't be an AC/DC fan and not like it.
Dude, since we filmed that episode, I've had to go to fanboy rehab. I feel like I'm a Jackal Jesse James Dupree groupie.
That song Stranded, you basically are hearing Bon Scott and Brian Johnson on the same song.
Yeah.
Right?
If you close your eyes and you don't know better, you almost think Bon Scott and Brian Johnson are doing a duet. It's amazing. And it obviously has some kind of link to Brian Johnson, because I think they've co-written 2 songs together and they have a duet in at least one song. So he's got to know that he has an AC/DC sound. Like, I can't even call it a Brian Johnson sound, because the beginning of Stranded, man, he's a dead ringer for Bon Scott.
Oh, absolutely.
And then as the song moves on, he moves into sounding like Brian Johnson, and then there's a certain spot in the song where he sounds like the combination of both of them. I'm going to temper my fanboyism as much as possible, since I went to fanboy rehab after the last episode, but I keep listening to Stranded, and it's probably Jesse James Dupree's best song to date that I've heard. And it is a great, great song that I'm betting gets no play anywhere, and nobody's buying any CDs or anything. The industry is such a shit show right now that there's really no difference between good music and garbage, because neither one of them are making any money. It seems to me like the only person making money in music right now is Taylor Swift.
That's interestingly said.
You got any news?
I got quite a bit of news, and I think you got something to add after I'm done, too. Lately, for whatever reason, I'm on a Bruce Kulick kick, and I saw a recent interview that was dated October 7th, 2024, so not long ago. It was an interview with VRP Rocks, and he basically, I'm just going to sum up some of the information that he put out there. One, he has a lot of big statements on the importance of a good producer. He's a big fan of Bob Ezrin, especially on the Revenge album. That was his favorite album. He described Bob Ezrin as a bad professor who, at times, like working with him was like torture. He said made him better. So that was something he really made a point to say about Bob Ezrin. And he was thrilled to be part of KISS. This I didn't know. He didn't plan on being part of KISS for longer than like 2 weeks. He was basically there to caddy Mark St. John, because Mark St. John had all his issues with the hands and everything like that. And there was a certain point in time they were still bringing Mark St. John on the tour and letting him play. But he kind of felt, not in a negative way, not to throw shade, he kind of felt like the gig was going to eventually become his. He felt like he fit in. At least at that point in KISS, he really felt like he fit in. So he wasn't surprised eventually when he was getting the gig. Again, he lasted 12 years with them, too. He stated that both Gene and Paul were great musicians, which never gets told. He said that Paul was an excellent rhythm player And he said that Gene's stick is always kind of like knocking the way he plays bass, but he said Gene is a phenomenal bass player. And I think he also said there's a lot of musicians that would back him up with that too. But Gene will never say that.
I can add a little bit to that. I just watched I think it was an older Bruce Kulick interview, and I didn't know this, and I don't think a lot of fans know this, but there's an Animalized concert out there that Mark St. John and Bruce Kulick split the show.
Yep.
And I never knew that before. I mean, I had heard the stories how Bruce was called to do like a 2-week touring schedule, and then after 2 weeks it was 2 more weeks and 2 more weeks, and then it went on for months.
Right.
And then at some point they kept Bruce there, like they transitioned. So they played 1 or 2 shows where they split it. And then Mark St. John actually, I think he only played 1 show, 1 full show. And I believe it's available off the sound check. It's on Spotify. It's like I don't know, it's almost like a bootleg, it's almost like an official bootleg live album. And it's with Mark St. John on guitar. And I'm sure people have heard this before. Well, maybe not. But when they were going home from the tour, Paul Stanley stopped Bruce Kulick and told him, "Don't cut your hair."
Yeah, I heard that too.
According to Bruce, that's when he pretty much knew something's going on. Obviously something was going on.
The next 2 bits of news I'm going to try to go through quick.
Oh, hold on. Beth is calling me.
Okay.
Oh, it went to voicemail. Don't worry about it.
All right, good. So Metal Hammer magazine did a feature about King Diamond, and it was noteworthy because it's about KISS. It referenced a 2016 interview about how in 1998, you might remember that KISS tried to sue King Diamond because they said his makeup was too closely related to Gene Simmons. And at the time, they weren't in makeup, but they had the makeup trademarked. So,
of course they did.
Right. And of course they did. That's smart business. But then his response was he wasn't inspired by KISS. He was inspired by Alice Cooper and Peter Gabriel, which sounds weird to me. Maybe I got to look a little more into Peter Gabriel because I don't remember him doing any of that kind of stuff. But he says the end analysis with him is nothing ever came of the lawsuit. He doesn't hate KISS. He still listens to them. And like I said, nothing came of the lawsuit. The last bit of news that I have was right now it's popular Joker, right? With Joaquin Phoenix is a very popular movie right now with Harley Quinn at the second Joker movie. He said that he was inspired by KISS, talking about how their everyday life, the real everyday life of them as the 70s rock band. And he compared to what it would be like in their 20s as opposed to now, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and how that changed. And he said that he drew inspiration for the role of Joker, referencing how they would be in that way. I just thought it was interesting little nugget to add there. Tidbit, nugget, whatever you'd like today. And that's what I have for the news. What do you have?
I just have one additional thing. I was listening to Eddie Trunk today. He brought up a little piece of news that Paul Stanley will be doing 2 art shows for Wentworth Gallery coming up in November. Friday, November 15th at the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City, and Saturday, November 16th at the mall at Short Hills. So if you're in the New Jersey area, that might be something for you. He will appear there. If anybody's interested in that, you can go to paulstanley.com and all the information is there. I believe it's free to go. You don't get any access to Paul unless you buy artwork, which, let me tell you something, it's going to cost more than loose change. I will tell you that because I have looked at it in the past, and I think I looked at one self-portrait of him in the Star Child makeup, and it was like $10,000, which makes me want to go be an artist.
I think I'll hit the casino and play the slots.
Yeah. So how about music? You got any music you're currently listening to?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, actually. I mean, since we've been doing this, like, I always am looking for something that's related to Kiss. And I have a friend of mine that I worked with that introduced me to a band called Black Veil Brides. Never heard of them ever, but supposedly they've been around for a while. They tour all over, not just Europe. They're all over the place. Still learning about them, still listening to some of their catalog and what they sound like. The reason I bring them up is they were extremely influenced by Kiss, and if you look for a picture of them, you can catch it right away that there's an influence there. So I mean, my buddy's 26 years old, and he's telling me that he's listening to the band that was influenced by Kiss.
I have a more mainstream. Motley Crue just came out with their EP. I don't know why. I would have preferred a full album from Motley Crue, but nobody buys them, and I have a feeling that that's part of the reason why. It's a 3-song EP. I think the first song that came out first as a single was Dogs of War. Dogs of War was interesting. It was a little more industrial, very much actually similar to my take on Mick Mars's new album, which is probably, I guess, 8-9 months old now, was more industrial sounding. Their second single off of that EP was a cover of You Got the Right by Beastie Boys, which was horrific, I thought. And this new song is Canceled, which I think is by far the best song out of the 3 of them. Definitely the first thing that came to me was it's greatly influenced by the addition of John 5.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, greatly influenced by the addition of John 5. Sounds industrial again. It does not sound at all like 1980s Motley Crue, which I'm okay with. It's a little more industrial, a little more Marilyn Manson.
Well, Johnny Five came from Rob Zombie, right?
Yeah, I would say there's some Rob Zombie influence in there too, and it's more of a 2024 sound coming out of Motley Crue, and believe this, and look, I know that this is done with all kinds of recording machines, but I thought Vince Neil's vocals sounded really good. I mean,
well,
you got to play it live before you give them any kind of credit, but
that's why I was going to kind of mention to you. I could see, because of all the flack they get from live shows now, I could see if they want to continue doing stuff, I could see them eventually just doing most. I never saw them live, but just doing stuff in the studio if they want to keep on doing stuff. Because I heard Vince is brutal on stage right now. Like, his voice is like shot.
There's no words to explain. If you want to know what Vince Neil sounds like live, put your cat in the dishwasher and just stand on the outside and listen to the sounds, because that's really
now you saying that, like, this is the other part of this equation. I know I've read the book Dirt. Like, I love Crue. I love the beginning when you had his voice when it was at its best, and then you add Mick Mars's riffs in there. That was really good sounding music. But it's really a shame what's happened to that band in a lot of ways.
Special Day, Destroyer. We both got the shirt on. You'll probably never see this ever again because it's a little geeky for me. This is my favorite or second favorite album that Kiss came out to that's a studio album. It's between Destroyer and Love Gun for me. All right, so what do you say we get into album info?
All right, sounds good.
Destroyer was released March 15th, 1976. It was recorded at Electric Lady Studio and the record plant in New York City. It's 34 minutes and 28 seconds in length. Of course, it was released by Casablanca Records, and it was produced by the legend of Bob Ezrin. 4 singles were produced from this record: Shout It Out Loud, Flaming Youth, Detroit Rock City, and Beth. The record was certified platinum on November 11th, 1976, and was recertified double platinum on September 9th, 2011. As far as album artwork goes, the album artwork was painted by fantasy artist Ken Kelly. A funny little tidbit of information for those that don't know this. The original version of Destroyer was rejected by the record company due to them thinking it was too violent looking with rubble and flames. Go figure. Probably in my top 5 of album artworks for KISS. I kind of think maybe Love Gonna be number 1, but Destroyer's right there. And Destroyer's probably the most famous album cover that KISS has. As far as t-shirts go, it definitely is the most famous because you can get a Destroyer t-shirt anywhere.
I like it. It's a very cool album cover.
Hey, KISS Army, we work hard on this podcast and try to give you the best content possible. If you like what we do, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel and our social media, which happens to be Hooligan Nation, a KISS-Centric podcast.
And while you're there, let us know if there's any KISS-related subjects you would like us to cover in the future episodes. And give us some likes. It helps the channel out a lot. And your comments mean an awful lot to us, too. We're trying to build a community here, so...
All right, what do you say we actually talk about music now?
Okay, sounds good. How about we start with Detroit Rock City?
Oh, that's a good way to start.
Yeah. After listening to, I've heard it many times, recently, but going back into the album again, I forgot about the intro. And, you hear the door closing, the keys, you hear KISS music playing on the radio in the car, you hear the door shut, and then boom, it comes in hot into the song. And again, this is a big time visual song. We say it an awful lot with KISS. But I remember just when I hear Detroit Rock City, I think about being live at a concert. It's an awesome song. It's a song that every KISS fan loves. I've never heard a KISS fan say they don't like that song, and you never get tired of it.
All true statements, at least for me. I don't know that KISS ever produced a better opening song. I mean, Detroit Rock City spent most of the rest of its life as the opener. Most, not all. But KISS never produced a better opener. I think the studio version is as good as the live version. I love the little intro in the beginning.
Me too.
Ace Frehley is a magician, if you ask me. I just heard an interview where I think Eddie Kramer says that Ace Frehley was the heart and soul of KISS. And this is one of those songs where I actually agree with him. Ace knows where to put his guitar licks, his riffs. He knows how long a solo should be. He wasn't interested in being the fastest. He wasn't interested in being technically the best, but he was the best guitarist for KISS, and he just knew where to put everything and when to put it there.
Right. If I had to equate Ace to a chef, I would really enjoy the food that he cooks, because he knows a little bit of this, a little bit of that. He knows not to do too much, not to do too little, and he knows right where to put it.
Yeah, for the most part, I would say Bob Ezrin did that on this record too, other than a couple songs.
You got to give the producer the credit too. But,
yeah.
Just a little side note: Paul and Bob Ezrin were the ones that wrote it, and obviously Paul did the singing. But again, awesome stage song, and like you said, it's the studio song is just as good as the stage presence too. All right, next you got King of the Nighttime World. Paul wrote it with Kim Fowley. What do you got on Kim Fowley?
What do I have on Kim Fowley? Kim Fowley was the manager of the legendary female rock band, The Runaways, which I thought was interesting.
That is
I'm sure it doesn't really have any historical significance. I just thought it was interesting that there was a connection between The Runaways and KISS, because you don't really see any connection musically. And what I mean is, Joan Jett, as far as I know, never did anything with KISS. Lita Ford, as far as I know, never did anything with KISS. I mean, Paul Stanley might have dated Lita Ford for a short time. Might have. But I thought that was interesting, and I don't know much about Kim Fowley, but I know he is a songwriter. I believe he was a musician. Like he wasn't just, it would be odd if you saw a co-write from Doc McGee.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But it's not that odd. Like Kim Fowley was more in that world.
Okay.
So, and as far as King of the Nighttime World, it's a great song. It's a defining KISS song. It's one of those songs that define the band. It's got great production on it. It's got great guitar work. It's great vocals. It's just another one of those good KISS songs.
Which brings us to another legendary song of KISS, featuring the God of Thunder himself, Gene Simmons. Paul wrote it and Gene did the vocals, but it goes without saying, if you're a KISS fan and you're watching this thing now and you've seen KISS live, you get excited and you look forward to God of Thunder. It's the epitome of what Gene Simmons became in his character, the Demon.
Another little tidbit for anybody that doesn't know this, it's a Paul Stanley song, and it was actually demoed with Paul singing on it. I believe it's available on Destroyer Resurrected. It's a good song with Paul singing it. It's a little faster paced. The chorus is a little different. Actually, the chorus is a lot different. It would have been a good KISS song if Paul sang it. As the story goes, Bob Ezrin knew it was a Gene Simmons song, took it away from Paul Stanley and gave it to Gene Simmons. And to me, it's the number one song that defines Gene.
It's hard to argue. That's definitely hard to argue that.
But it's definitely got to be in the top 3 of songs. It's a historically significant Gene Simmons KISS song due to the stage show and the stage presence of it. That would have never been that way if it was a Paul Stanley song.
And me and you were talking too, like it has 2 identities as a song, right? The studio version's different than live. Live is awesome, but the studio version's really cool too.
Yeah, I love the studio version with the kids in the background. It's very well produced for me. I think Ezrin hit a home run with the intro to Detroit Rock City, and I think he hit a home run with the kids in the background of God of Thunder.
Then if you want a weird song with a weird vibe, I got one for you. Great Expectations, written by Gene and Bob Ezrin and sung by Gene. They sound like a different band. It almost sounds like a song that you might find on Gene's solo album. It's definitely a little bit odd.
It's another one of their ventures into the Beatle-esque song.
Right.
They do it on different albums, different songs. I chalk this up to being Gene's infatuation with the Beatles. And sometimes it works out well.
Mhm.
And sometimes
not so much.
And this is one of those not so much. I think it's an overproduced song. When you have a genius like Bob Ezrin, he's gonna overproduce things sometimes. And we see it coming up in this record more times. But it's not a terrible song. I can listen to it.
Yeah, again, it goes back to that thing you said. Almost every song has a cool groove on it, so it's hard to turn. You're not going to skip it too often. And then the next song, definitely, in my opinion, was made with a purpose to target a certain audience. Flaming Youth, I like the song. It's not my favorite, but I like it. Ace, Paul, Gene, and Bob did the writing. Paul did the vocals. Has a cool riff. To me, it's a very, very commercial, very commercial song, and I believe it's one of the singles, right?
It was one of the singles, yes. Yeah, it's a nondescript song for me. It's a good song. It's just not one of my favorite songs. Might be slightly overproduced. It's funny. I was watching another podcast, and somebody accused KISS of the song being a gay song because it has the word flaming in it.
That's a little bit of a stretch, I would think.
I thought it was a bit of a stretch. I mean, I know that certain things were thrown out much more in the 70s, but I don't get the gay vibe.
No, it's about a kid, right? The flaming,
Yeah.
stupid and I'm lazy, right? To me, it's like it's definitely a kid's song.
I agree with you. It might be another attempt at an anthem.
Yeah, it's definitely had a purpose. That song definitely was written and produced with a purpose.
Might have missed its target a little bit.
To me,
For me, it missed its target.
you know where I could put this song next to, and if it's a different band, but like a song I could put it next to that it sounds almost identical type of message. We're not going to take it.
Okay.
It just hit me, just came to me. But I'm thinking it's about kids, about teenagers, kids, whatever. Next, we are on to Sweet Pain. Gene did the writing, Gene did the vocals. This is all Gene, pretty much. I don't really have a lot of an opinion on that. I don't know what you have for that, but I don't really have much opinion of Sweet Pain, to be honest with you.
Standard issue KISS song sung by Gene. I like it. I don't hate it.
Yeah, I don't dislike it.
I don't skip it. I just don't usually seek it out. It's a good song. It's well produced. I like it musically. I like Gene's vocals in it. It's just not. It's a good song.
It's a good song, but if I'm going, like, if you're at an amusement park, right? If we're gonna go from that song to the next one, if you're at an amusement park and you know the thing, we got the club and you swing it and it hits and
Yeah.
it shoots up. To me, going from Sweet Pain to Shout It Out Loud is like hitting that thing. The next one's way up here. Because Shout It Out Loud is a legendary KISS song. You can't not sing it if you're at the concert and it's playing. It was written by Paul, Gene, and Bob Ezrin, and Paul and Gene do the vocals, but great harmonies, great riffs. It's just a great KISS song. It's in my top 10 without a doubt.
You got a lot of songs in your top 10. You do know you can only have 10.
Well, you're gonna have to fact check to try to see if I went past.
I think you're close.
Yeah, I know I'm probably on the teeter totter in there, but
Shout It Out Loud is a great song. It's another one of those examples of a song that is great live, but is also great on the studio record. There's a lot of them on this record. Detroit Rock City, King of the Nighttime World, God of Thunder, Shout It Out Loud are equally as good in the studio as they were live. I do love the Shout It Out Loud version. Don't ask me why, I'm goofy, that they came up with after they reunited and Ace sang a verse. The three of them singing on the song is just my favorite version of the song. But it's a great song altogether. It's one of those KISS songs I have nothing bad to say about.
you know what else too? Like you brought up something in one of our other episodes where you said you brought up the thing timeless. Like, can you see this being a current song? I could see this being a current song. Like this is the timeless song.
Absolutely. And some of these songs on here, like Great Expectations, Flaming Youth, they're dated songs.
Yeah.
Shout It Out Loud, Detroit Rock City, God of Thunder they're timeless songs.
And then is the phone ringing?
Yeah, hold on. Beth is calling. Wait, I'll send her a voicemail.
The legendary song Beth, sung by Peter Criss, but he also had some help writing this, which a lot of fans don't know. Stan Penridge, and what do you got on Stan Penridge? And also Bob Ezrin did some writing too.
So Stan Penridge was a co-writer with him on more than one song. I don't remember what the other songs were at the moment, but we'll find it in the future. I believe that Stan Penridge goes back to Peter Criss's days in the band prior to KISS. There's quite a bit of disagreements over this song, over who wrote most of it. And I've heard Bob Ezrin's story. I've actually heard Stan Pendridge's story, and I've heard Peter's story. And out of all of them, I tend to believe Bob Ezrin, who said that when the song got to him, it was kind of a mess. It had no direction. And he pretty much, well, this is a bad use of the term, but he pretty much orchestrated what ended up to be the final song, which I happen to believe is way overproduced for me. I know how popular the song is and was. I know that the song won awards and really skyrocketed KISS. But when I heard the acoustic version of it on KISS Meets the Phantom of the Park, I thought the acoustic version was better. Maybe everybody doesn't know this, but Peter Criss had a band in the 90s called KRISS. The most famous thing about the one record that they put out is it's a picture of him on the cover, and half his face is in cat makeup and half his face isn't. And there's an acoustic version of Beth on that record, which is a good acoustic version. But if you ask me, there's no better version of Beth than on Unplugged. It's the best produced acoustic version of the song that to me, it is.
Well, you really went to the vault to find out that information on Chris, huh?
Yeah, I had to. Actually, I didn't, and this is funny. And again, we'll tease this for future episodes. But Chris actually played a club that I was working at. I don't know, 1993, 1994, and I had to pick the band up from the airport, and I had to take them to a radio station, and then take them to the club where they were playing. So I got to deal with Peter Criss and all his glory for about 10 hours, 12 hours that day. That'll be its own standing episode, probably. But that's why I know about it. And it's available. I believe it's still available on Spotify. I'm not a big fan of the record or anything, but it's a rock record. But that version, that acoustic version, is on there.
So the character that you identify with, you got to hang with for a while. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it didn't turn out to be pretty cool. I mean, like I teased this, I think in last week's episode, I didn't get to meet him as a fan. I was doing private security for him. And it was less than a wonderful experience. Scott Ian from Anthrax used to have a show on Sirius XM that was titled Never Meet Your Heroes. Home run. It was not a great experience. I'm not personally a huge fan of Peter Criss and his attitude. The Catman and the music, big fan. Him personally, definitely came across as little man's disease. Funny enough, there are interviews out there with a guy that was in his band, and yeah, little man's disease.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was his own worst enemy pretty much his entire life.
That's very true.
So,
all right, so our next song is "Do You Love Me?" Paul and Bob Ezrin and Kim Fowley did the writing on this. We touched on Kim Fowley earlier. I love the attitude of this song. It's cool for what the band stood for. Again, it's a very visual. Basically, is a song about the life of a rock star, like ride to my limousine and all that stuff. I think it's cool for it. It definitely is a song that really fits their band.
yeah, I think it's a great story song. I think a lot of these songs on this record, the songs are stories to me. Detroit Rock City is a story. God of Thunder is a story. Shout It Out Loud is not. but Do You Love Me is a story song to me. He's telling you a story. I think it's a great song. It's not one of my favorites, but I think it's a great song. I love Paul's vocals on it. It's in that group that's somewhat in the middle that I don't seek them out, but when I hear them, they're great songs.
What's kind of neat to me about this song, and there's a lot of Kiss songs like this, like "We Are One" and stuff like that. It really is kind of also a little bit of a blend on their relationship with the fans. Like, you come to the shows, you hang, you see my life, but do you love me? You know what I mean? Like, it's a nice play on, like, you love that visual that you see up there, but do you really love me? I think it was a pretty neat, well written song.
And if you dig historically into Paul Stanley, he worried about things like that. He worried about, did they love him?
Right.
I would say that there's probably some truth to this song, to the lyrics in this song. There's some truth to it.
Yeah, I mean, and we're both big fans of all the members of the band and all this stuff. And Paul's never been my favorite, but the one thing is he's pretty consistent with the way he talks about what he went through growing up and everything like that. Half the reason he wanted to, put the makeup on and stuff like that is because he could get outside of who he was and be able to put that out there. And last, we have on the track listing a forgettable ending instrumental written by Gene Paul and Bob Ezrin, Rock and Roll Party. I think we both feel like this is something that could have been left off the album. This is kind of the reason I have a bad vibe on this one, is because it to me it was the whole album is good, is really good, and it makes it look bad. Like, it shouldn't have been on the album. Period.
I just envision Bob Ezrin, Ace Frehley in the studio. It's 2 a.m. There's a mound of cocaine this high. There's empty beer cans all over the place. And they've come up with a minute 25 that they're going to call an instrumental masterpiece that sounds to me like someone should have kicked that can down the road, because I don't know why it's here. There is no good Kiss record to put this on. This should have ended up on the cutting room floor.
Absolutely.
I've listened to a lot of interviews with Bob Ezrin. I've listened to a lot of interviews with Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, and I don't think anybody's ever asked, why is this here? Because it doesn't make any sense. It's not an instrumental to me. It's not a song to me. I don't know where it belongs or why anybody would have ever thought that it belonged there. It's probably the definition of Bob Ezrin is a genius, but with geniuses sometimes comes too much.
Yeah.
And that's the definition of too much. I don't know how a minute and 25 can become too much, but that minute and 25 is way too much. 15 seconds of that would have been too much.
Well, it also comes down, like I said, it's kind of an insult to the album. The album is great, but then you're putting that on there, and it's like your ending should be hot and done.
Hey, at least they put it at the end.
Yeah,
so you can just not play it, which is what I do.
Well, I mean, listen, on the picture of the cover, they're standing like on a cliff. It looks almost like they're on a cliff. They could have let that song fall right off the cliff, as far as I'm concerned. Again, I mean, I don't want to bash it. But it's just not.
Oh no,
this doesn't fit.
Rock and Roll Party is a bashable song to me. It's probably more bashable. It's definitely more bashable than anything on Carnival of Souls. And it's probably more bashable than anything on The Elder.
Well, when you're listening to something and you have to say to yourself, after listening to all the other songs, and you're listening to this, and your first take that you have is, why? It's not really a good response.
And my second take is, what am I listening to?
Yeah.
It's why and what am I listening to?
Okay, so that's what I have for the tracks on the album. What else you got?
I don't really have much on Stage Show. I can't find anything. I've been looking for it for a week. I'm guessing, and it's a guess, the Stage Show is getting bigger. I did see some video where the KISS sign is growing. And that's really all I got. For whatever reason, it's probably just me, but I can't find anything on video.
No, I looked too. I didn't find much.
I do have the set list,
Oh,
which
cool.
is, I would call, an incredibly good set list. Detroit Rock City slots in at the beginning of the show, which to me is the perfect part of it and where it spent most of the rest of Kiss's life. Most, not every show. They did open up to Creatures of the Night a couple times that I know of, but other than that, Detroit Rock City has been the opener. King of the Nighttime World, Let Me Go Rock and Roll, which I find funny. That I think that shows that their songwriting and production is getting better. Let Me Go Rock and Roll has gone from the show closer to the third song in the show. So things are rapidly moving for Kiss. Next song, Strutter, Hotter Than Hell, Nothing to Lose, Cold Gin, guitar solo, Shout It Out Loud, Do You Love Me, bass solo, God of Thunder, drum solo, Rock and Roll All Night. And then they have 3 encore songs, Deuce, Firehouse, and they close out the show with Black Diamond. I imagine it's a great show. Most of the songs seem like they're slotted in a pretty perfect spot for me at least. And like I think for most Kiss shows, looks like a greatest hits set list to me. I, but I always think I can't wait till we get to a set list that I don't think is a greatest hits set list. I'm not sure is ever going to happen.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, they know what works for them and they know what works for them live. So you get to a certain point, it's like I can see them as a band being like, well, we can't not do that. We can't not do that. You know what I mean? And then, okay, well, we got something new. What are we going to add into that? So it must, after a while, it must have been hard for them to try to fit, other stuff that comes out that they did newer because they have songs that they have to do.
And they really seem to know what they had. Like, you don't see Sweet Pain. You don't see Great Expectations. Shockingly enough, you don't see Beth yet because it hasn't been released as a single and hasn't blown up yet.
It's a good point.
Come next tour, I bet you're going to see Beth as an encore.
Oh, sure. Featured. In closing, what else you got going on?
I think Destroyer is most definitely their most complete album to date. I think what takes it over the top is the production. It's overproduced in certain areas, but there's nowhere it's underproduced. All in all, it was great song structure, great songwriting, great musicianship. It's another record that Ace kills it. It produced tons of songs that ended up spending a lot of time in the live set list. Detroit Rock City, God of Thunder, Shout It Out Loud, and Beth, pretty much,
Legendary songs of theirs.
and have been in the live set list pretty much since this record came out. I mean, they stopped playing Beth when Eric Carr got in the group. I don't think they ever played it live with Eric Carr singing it like they do now. Well, like they did with Eric Singer singing it. But whenever Peter Criss was in the band, it was pretty much in it. And Shout It Out Loud, God of Thunder, and Detroit Rock City are staples. From listening to this record, it's not shocking that they would go back to Bob Ezrin more than once to produce future records.
Right.
Some turned out good. Some didn't turn out so good, but I can understand why they went back to him. And he's a musical genius. He just sometimes overdoes the production. Elder, but sometimes he overdoes it.
Yeah. The only other thing I'll say before we finish up this one is, and I don't think I ever told you this, it's the only album cover I ever considered getting a tattoo of on me. Like, I'm definitely going to get a KISS tattoo at some point. I don't think I'm going to do my original idea that I wanted to do when I was 26 and get the entire album on my back. Probably not going to do that.
Well,
But
look,
this is the one I ever thought of doing it.
I have a full back tattoo. One thing I will tell you is if you get a full back tattoo, you'll be glad you only have one back because you'll never do it again.
Well, like I said, I was 26 when I was thinking of it. So
I'm pretty sure I got a little PTSD from my back tattoo. That's going to wrap it up for us this week. Until next time, my little KISS Army, remember, if it's too loud, you're too old. Peace out.
subscribe.